Just setting up. Start in a second. Okay, so we left off last week with the we finished this. We didn't quite finish it. We talked about the Gemora that discusses this idea of whether people pay early or not. Yeah. So in a case where pay back early, person takes out a loan and they pay, I paid you back. He makes a claim at some point saying that I paid you back early before the date was due. The question is, do you pay back? Do we say that he's believed or not? And we had a machlokus between Reish Lakish and Abai and Rava. That was in the bottom of Hey Amud Aleph. Reish Lakish says, Eino Neman. He says, Alavai Shifra Bizmana. If only someone would pay back at the right time, let alone pay back early. He's not believed. Abai and Rava say that people do pay back sometimes early because you get a cash, unexpected windfall. And you decide, well, the best thing I can do with this windfall is to pay back my debts, and that does happen. Okay. And we explained last time the reason why we brought this here was simply because the Gemora wants to attempt to tie the Mishnah, to this same machlokus, right? So we had a Mishnah. The Mishnah the Mishnah here talked about the wall that falls down, and someone else. One of the two partners, it's a wall, the dividing party wall in the middle. One of them builds it, and then the other guy says, I paid you. I paid you for it. And we said that there's an assumption that he would have paid until he brings a proof, that he hasn't given the money. Because everyone knows, it's widely known that up to 4 amos, it's a joint deal. You've both got to contribute. That was the first half of the Mishnah. We assume he's paid. And then once you go above 4 amos, right? So someone builds a wall higher than 4 amos, the obligation only kicks in for you to contribute, the other guy to contribute above the 4 amos height, right? If you do something which shows that you are happy and are going to use that height, like you're going to build something that's going to rely on that high wall or whatever it is. We're going to discuss in the Gemora on Vav and Aleph exactly how that works and what the level of obligation is. But the principle the Mishnah is talking about is people don't know this halacha. And therefore, if he comes along and says, I paid, we don't believe him, right? If he comes along and says, I paid, we don't believe him. That's what is b'cheska shelo nosan. He's assumed that he hasn't given until he brings a proof that he has given, right? That is what the Gemara, that is what the Mishnah said. And the Gemara tried to tie down the Mishnah to this same machlokus, to Abai and Rava and Reish Lakish as to whether or not people pay back early or not. The Gemara wanted to try and say that effectively, what would be the chiddush in the Mishnah unless you say that the situation was that he said, I paid back for the first half of the Mishnah, I paid back early, and that's why it's a chiddush to tell me that he's believed. And the Gemara says, no, that's no proof, because you could learn the Mishnah is nothing to do with that. The Mishnah is he said he paid back at the right time, and it's simply selling. And it's simply there is no within the time of the loan in the case of the Mishnah, because we said that the obligation in the Mishnah kicks in at every row of bricks, right? There it is. There's no the case doesn't exist of toch zman, toch zmano within the time, right? It just doesn't exist in the scenario in the Mishnah. And similarly, the end of the Mishnah, the Gemara says it's also. Although the Gemara again wanted to say that the chiddush must be in a case where he pays back within the time of the loan, and we said, and therefore it would be a proof that people do not pay back at the right time because we say he's not believed. Do not pay back early because we said he's not believed. So we say no, it's nothing to do with it. There really, the case is he pays back at the right time, and he's not believed because he doesn't think that the Rabbanon, right, obligate him. There's a lack of knowledge around that case. The idea that you should be obligated to pay once you show that you're happy with the higher wall, right? But I left off. So that's essentially the Gemara's conclusion is that our Mishnah doesn't prove one way or another. But we said that the Gemara clearly concludes that the halacha is like Reish Lakish. The halacha is that we assume people do not pay back loans within the time, right? If you take a loan out from someone and you've got 3 months to pay back, there's an assumption that the person will not have paid back early. To the extent that if they say they have, then they are then they are not believed. Then they are not believed, right? Now, I mentioned to you that one thing we had to clarify is why. Why is this such a strong chazaka that people never pay back, or we assume they won't pay back early, right? Well, what is the reason? What is the rationale? And we finished off with a very, very short Tosfos, right? Which says, it's the bottom of Hayamud Aleph, where Tosfos says, it's Doma Maskal HaKovea, right at the bottom, Omeri, the Re says, Davko Kovea Zman, only someone fix the time. Avol Bestam Halvor, when it comes to a Stam Halvor, now a Stam Halvor is always assumed to be 30 days, yeah? If you lend money to someone and you don't tell them when they need to pay back, halachically they have 30 days, right? Within 30 days is not considered to be toich zmano. It's not considered to be within the time, right? Within the time. In other words, if you take out a 30-day loan, and it was a standard loan, we didn't specify the time, there is no assumption that a person doesn't pay back early, and it may well be that, right? Yeah, there's the whole thing doesn't. This whole idea that people don't pay back early doesn't exist. All right, that's what the Tosfos says. So I mentioned last time that in this Tosfos is the clue to understanding the rationale, because you have to ask yourself, okay, what's the difference? Yeah, why is it that with a loan where you specify the period of repayment, yeah, we assume you will not pay back until that day, whereas with a stam halvor, where you give any time frame, right, we assume we don't have such an assumption, and people may well pay back at any moment. So this is the question, because this is the clue to understanding it. So any suggestions? I want to show you a ketsos about this, but any suggestions? What's the rationale? Why do people not pay back loans?
If you gave a date, it means that you are not intend maybe to pay before, because this is the reason why you gave a date from the start, because you can't pay before, by this date you intend to pay. But if you didn't give a date, you may give it before or may not. But you didn't say that you're
okay. If you didn't give a date, then okay, all right. But surely Abai and Rova have a very strong argument here, right? They say you might get a windfall of cash. It's perfectly reasonable to pay early, to say there's a very strong possibility you pay early. You need something, I think, a bit stronger than that, perhaps. What is firing Reish Lakish's approach here to say that it's such a strong chazaka, it's such a strong assumption people don't pay back early. I'm not saying you're not on the right, not all right. It's like it's on the right track here. Any other thoughts? So, okay, so let me share my screen with you. If I can bring this up, hopefully. Oh, that's right. It's over here. 1 second. Let me just get this ready. Oops. Okay. Here we go. Not that one. This one. There we go. Can you see that? Yeah? Can you see that? Yeah? So, okay, so I want to take you through a Ketos. Ketos Hoshen explains the story here, explains the rationale. It's always nice sometimes when you learn something like this, just to understand, who we're talking about here. The Ketos HaChoshen has become, one of the most important Sfarim on, it's actually a Pirish on Shulchan Aruch. But when you're learning certainly in the yeshiva world, the Ketos is one of the most important Achronim. He was a Rav in Galicia. He was a descendant of the Tosis Yontif. His name was Ari Lepa Cohen Heller, and he was born in 1745. And one of the things that he became very effectively very famous for is one of his other works, which was known as the Shev Shmeitzer. The Shev Shmeitzer was said to have been written, which literally means the 7 topics, the 7 studies. He was said to have written at least the first draft of that sefer right? Each during his Sheva Brachos, or for his Sheva Brachos, in honor of his Sheva Brachos. That's why it was Shev Shmaitzer, one for each night of the Sheva Brachos. So he was obviously a complete, an incredible genius. The story is told that he once went to a Rov. He completed the Sefer Ktsos HaChoshen at the age of 40. He went to a Rov called Reb Tzvi Hirsch Boschka, and he wanted to get Haskah. And he said to me, this Rav was quite skeptical that he would actually been able to write something would add anything to what the Yonas and Eibeshitz had already written in V'tumim. So he asked him to leave the Sefer and to come back the next day. And he came back the next day before Mincha. He heard an announcement that there was going to be Achnos Sefer Torah. As he decided to join in the Achnos Sefer Torah. Anyway, it turned out that they came to the procession, and he uncovered the cover, and instead of the Sefer Torah was the manuscript of the Sefer that he had written, because this Rav was so incredibly impressed by the Sefer that he made a Achnos Sefer Torah for it. So there you are. That's a little bit about the Ktsos. What does the Ktsos HaChoshen say about this? So this is a Shulchan Aruch. I know it's not very clear. I'm going to give you a clear one in a second. Let's just zoom in a little bit here. Here we go. So here, the last sif in Siman Ayin Ches and Shulchan Aruch Cheshem Mishpat is Hodar min Chazak Ein Adam Pereya. Can you see the shulchan in the middle? Yeah. Hodar min Chazak Ein Adam Pereya b'Soch Zmanoi. That which we say there's a chazaka, people don't pay back within the time of the loan. Hainu dafka b'kovei zman. That's only if you fix the time. Avul b'stam halvor, you don't specify. Avul b'shizman shloshim yom, even if it's 30 days. Neman lomer, a person who's believed to say pratich b'soch lamad yom. You believe that he's paid off within 30 days, right? And we should be able to get a clearer picture here of the Ktsos. Here we go. So here's the Ktsos, right? So the Ktsos says like this: b'kovei zman. Kosav asma, he says. The Sma says, well, that's a bit too close. The Sma says, Dafka b'kevei zman. Yeah, can you see it clearly, all of you? Yeah, right? Dafka b'kevei zman. The bigish mitchila zman me'amalveh. The Sma gives the Svara that because he asked for a time at the beginning of the loan, Gilodaito, he's revealed shetzorich le'ad zman. Ein shom. So that was Shlomo's Svara. Yeah, the Sma says that, right? If you asked for a time, the logic is that you needed all that time. Okay, and therefore there's no you can't then go against that by any assumption. We have to assume that you will not pay until that time, because if you ask for a time, the assumption is you're not going to have any money till then. So we said there's a bit of a problem with that. One problem is that anyone can get a cash windfall. Things can change, circumstances can change, and you might want to pay off the loan. And he also says another interesting question on. He says that's not the main reason. Why? Does schirus a pigeon ben? He says schirus and pigeon ben. Can you see it? Yeah. Gabi meis ha'av toch shloshim. When it comes to rentals, or he says pigeon ben. An example of pigeon ben. Pigeon ben is a great example. If the father tragically dies within 30 days, okay, we still say there's a chazaka ein adam pereh, right? There's still a chazaka. A person will never pay off during the time. Now, in case of pigeon ben, okay, there was no revelation. You didn't make any specification that you're not going to pay off till a certain time, right? Or a kosel chotzer, the wall of the courtyard, right? The wall in our case in the Mishnah, where we try to bring a parallel, right? There's no in all those cases. There's no statement. There's nothing that you've said. I've specifically clarified that I'm only going to pay off at a certain date, and nevertheless, we say chazaka ein adam pereh toch zmano. People never pay off within the time. So what's the reason? He says aval ikar chazaka, where I've underlined it, ikar chazaka mikach minhag. It's because of the strength of the minhag. The ein nergin efrei toch zmano, that the people do not pay off. The minhag is not to pay off within the time of a loan. The gabi toch shloshim, within 30 days, the stam halvor of a loan where there was no time frame specified. Ha minhag lefrei toch shloshim. There, the minhag is to pay off within 30 days. Because of this, and that's why you can't say there chazaka people don't pay off within the time. He says Muki Yosef brings the same thing. It means Rav Haigon and the Rif. Only when you fix the time. Avol bistam halvor. Let's see if we can go to the next bit. 1 second. That's all right. Avol bistam halvor. Right. There. When it comes to a loan without a specified time, it's 30 days. That a loan is always assumed to be 30 days. that means you can't claim it back. You can't go to the person who borrowed and ask for him to pay back until 30 days. People definitely do pay off within 30 days because you didn't fix an explicit time. People do pay off in the time. And this assumption that people don't pay off within the time is dependent on the minhag of the world, okay, in the way people generally pay off debts and pay off loans. Okay, so that's the Ketzos HaChoshen, right? Is everyone, can you everyone clear on that, right? So this is the Ketzos. What the Ketzos is really saying is that it really comes back to something we learned at the very beginning of this Masechta, the strength of minhag. We want to establish a chazaka, which we translate, it literally means, as we said last time, it means something, a strength. It's really the strength of an assumption. There is really nothing more powerful than general practice. That's what we mean by minhag here, right? General business practice, yeah? The general practice in a business sense is if you set up a loan for a month, 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is, yeah, you don't pay off before that date. That's just that is how people do things. Whereas when it comes, and like Pigeon Aben, for example, he brings that example of Pigeon Aben, yeah? There's a chazaka, no one's going to pay off. No one's going to pay off the debt within the 30 days, right? They're just not going to do that. Whereas when it comes to something which is where there's nothing specified, which people know that it's 30 days because that's just the way stam halvor is. But it could easily be that a person might pay off during the time as well. Okay, any questions? Okay, so that's okay. So there you go. So anyway, that's a pshat in that, and it's not just going back to last time because it's also needed for the coming Gemora, I think, as well. We're at the bottom of Daf Hey Amud Beis, where we're going to go and ask another question that is relevant to this. Now, I think this question, I think Martin, I think you raised it kind of last time. You'll tell me if it's exactly what the question you raised or not. Let's see. Okay, so it's the bottom of Hey Amud Beis. Iboilu, they asked the following shaila. Ask the following question. Tovei la'achazman. Yeah, everyone got it? Tovei la'achazman. If he claimed after the time of the loan was up, so he comes up to him a week after, the loan is up after 3 months, he knocks on his door, the next, a few days later, and he says, excuse me, you got to pay me. V'omaloi, and he responds by saying, Paratich b'toich zmani. I paid you off during the time of the loan. Before the 3 months were up, I paid you off. Mal, what's the din? Miyamrin, do we say b'mokum chazaka, in a place where there's a chazaka, in a situation where there's a chazaka that people do not pay off, right? Within the time of the loan, we've established that chazaka. We're going like Reish Lakish. Do we say in that situation a svara of maloi l'shaker? Why would he possibly be lying? Now this is what we call a migoy, which we discussed briefly last time. And the migoy means sense. It's very straightforward. Look at the last Rashi on the Amud. Malo l'shaker. Why should he lie? If he wanted, he could have said to him, I paid you off at the time when the loan was up at the end of the 3 months. Remember, this guy is knocking on his door several days later. He could have said, right, I paid you bang on the day when the loan was due, and he would be believed. End of story, right? Because people pay back at that time. Hilkach therefore ki omalei, says Rashi, when he says to him, Nami paratich b'toich zmani, I paid you off within the time of the loan, Nemon bishvur, he should be believed with a shvur. He has to make a shvur. It's not so simple that he can be believed without a shvur. He has to make a shvur. But there should be a strong logical argument, to believe him, because he could have said a better claim. The whole point of purpose, the whole function of a migoy is since is that, since you could have said something better and you would have been believed, then we believe you when you give a weaker claim, because you would have just said, if you were lying, you might as well say a better lie. So it must be that alone should give you the proof, should be a proof that you are telling the truth. You're telling the truth. Yeah. Oy Dilma, says the Gemara, top of the next one, or perhaps the Mokum Chazaka loy amrin mali l'shaker, or maybe that the Chazaka is so strong that it defeats any possibility of. 1 second, I'm just deal with the phone. Yeah, so it defeats any possibility of. We defeat any possibility of mala of a migoy. So even though you've got a logical argument to believe him, when that goes geneged chazaka, it doesn't work. I have to unplug it. Hold on. I have dispensed with it. Okay, good. So, since we say, says Rashi, look at Rashi, top of the next one. Since we assume that person never pays off Tochs Mano, we don't say we don't say there's a chazaka de Mari Dibure, which destroys, effectively, not destroys, but it damages everything he's saying. It damages his words. That Mali Lashaka. We don't say in that situation a Mali Lashaka, why would he lie? And therefore believe him. That's what we don't say. Okay? Is everyone clear? Yeah? Is everyone clear? The question is, in the case of chazaka, can we say you should believe him because of a migoy, since he could have made a better claim? Martin, I am right that you I think that's what you raised last time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they should be the migo should make him believe.
Since you brought me into this, so what's the difference? You keep saying that a migo is saying since. Isn't hoyel the same in English?
Yeah.
But yet a different concept.
Yeah, when the Gemora uses migo, I mean the real place and the real the primary place of migo is in Cheskes Abatim in the third paragraph. But the Gemora uses migo in this seems to use it in this particular context. Hoyel it uses in a different way. So, for example, hoyel is used like we come to the questions of cooking on Yom Tov and things like that. Do we say hoyel mikloile orchim, since you could have guests, since guests could have come? Yeah. Whereas migo, although technically you're right, it seems to be that the translation was also since, but it means that migo, you could have said this, therefore we believe you in that. Yeah, it's got a specific meaning in that sense. Yeah. I mean, here the Gemara doesn't use the word migo, but that's what it's. But that's what it is. Yeah, the Gemara calls it a malu l'shaka. Really, why would he be lying? So that's the question of the Gemara. How strong the Gemara is really testing here? How strong this chazaka is? How strong this assumption is that people never pay back Tochs Mano? And if you come back to that Ketos, right? The Ketos Achoshin, really, the question is how strong is the minhag? Yeah, how strong is the minhag that people never pay back Tochs Mano? Is it so strong that even if we've got a logical reason, there's a proof for his words, because he's, he must be telling the truth, because he would have said a better lie if he was lying. Yeah, is that enough to defeat? Is that enough to defeat what we are, to defeat the chazaka or not? So the Gemara, again, similar to before, tries to prove from our Mishnah one way or the other. Toshma says the Gemara. We said in the Mishnah, the first half of the Mishnah, there's an assumption that he's given the money, right, until he brings a proof that he hasn't given the money, right? That's what we said in the Mishnah. In the case where it's the 4 amas height. Hey Chidomi, what's the case? If you're going to say the case is that he claimed and he asked for the money after the time, so he came a few days later. He said to him, Paratich bizmani, I paid you off bizmani, I paid you off at the right bizmani, meaning at the time when I was at the right time when I was supposed to pay off Pshita. Obviously he's believed. What's the chiddush? Obviously he's believed to say, I paid you off at the right time. Ella loved on the Gemara wants to suggest the case must be where he says to him, I paid you off betoch's money, within the time. That means to say earlier than it was due. So we see afilu b'mokum chazaka amrinan malu l'shaka. So you see, even in a situation of chazaka, even in a situation where there's a chazaka, which would seem to imply that a person is not the chazak people do not pay back early. Yeah. And that is the chiddush of the Mishnah. Because otherwise, what's the Mishnah coming to tell me? The chiddush must be that even mokum chazaka, we do say mali l'shaker, And therefore, when he says, I paid you back within the time of the loan, he's believed because he could have said something better. Says the Gemora, Shani Hocha, here is same answer as before on the previous summit. Shani Hocha here is different to call Sofa Sofa's money who. Here, there is no Toichazman, because every row of bricks, really, that's when you become obligated to pay, right? That's when the debt becomes effective. You now have to pay at that moment. So there is no Toichazman. And we explained last time that therefore the whole chiddush is that halacha. The chiddush is that at each moment, every time you build a row within the 4 amos, the obligation kicks in for the other party to contribute. That's what the Mishnah is coming to tell us. So it's nothing to do. Again, the Gemara wanted to go down this route because it wanted to sort of say by a process of elimination, what could the chiddush possibly be of the Mishnah that a person would be believed to say he paid a debt, which everyone knows about, if he said he paid the right time. The one says, well, it has to be that scenario must be this scenario, right? Where you say you paid off within the time and you believe because of the migo, even connected chazaka. So no, nothing to do with that at all. It's not talking about scenario at all. It's a different chiddush. Is to tell you that the chiyuv kicks in at every moment. Toshma, the Gemara now says, let's prove from the end of the Mishnah. So all identical to as before. From 4 amos and above, so you do not obligate him. But we said if he puts another wall next to it, then he is obligated. He does have to pay, because then he's shown that he's interested in the wall, the party wall. He has to, and he's not believed, we said, until he brings a proof that he has paid. Say Chidomi, what's the case? If you're going to say the case is that he asked him for the money after the loan was due, and he said to him, Paratich bizmani, I paid you off when I was supposed to. Amailo, why should he not be believed? That should be a standard debt where you should be believed if you said that you paid off at the right time. Elolav do'omale paratich b'tzmani. That it must be that he says, I paid you off within the time of the loan, and that's the whole chiddush, that you're not believed. Alma, so we see, but mokum chazaka, in a place of chazaka, a situation of chazaka, that people don't do that. Lo yamrin mali l'shaka. We don't say in mali l'shaka that you should believe him because of a migoy, because of the since he could have said a better lie. And that must be the whole chiddush of the Mishnah, says the Gemara. No, says the Gemara again, shani hoche. Here is different to Omar because he can say mi yema de mechayvi li rabbanon. He can say who says that the rabbanon even obligate me to pay at all. So exactly the same as we did before. In reality, the case is even when he says I paid you off at the right time. So the guy comes along at a later date and says, excuse me, you owe me money for the wall which was higher than 4 amos because you've built another wall which shows you're interested in that wall. And the guy turns around and says, I paid you off. I paid you when it was due. So we said, why shouldn't he be believed? The answer is because people don't think that such an obligation exists. Who says the Rabbanon are going to make me pay just because I built another wall and demonstrated my intent to possibly use the other guy's wall, right? That's what so therefore that is the chiddush of the Mishnah, that we assume people don't know this halacha, and therefore if a person turns around and says, I paid you already, we assume they did not pay. Okay, that is what all the Gemara has done here, very simply, is simply try to prove by a process of elimination that our Mishnah, either the first half, the Reisha, or the Sefer, must be, to find the Chiddush in the Mishnah, must be this very case. And he can prove one way or the other, right, from either the Reisha or the Sefer, whether we do or don't say this believability, this Mala L'Shaka, this Migoy, even Keneged Chazaka, right? That's what the Gemara wanted to say. The Gemara says it's no proof at all from our Mishnah. So we can't resolve it from there. The question is, where can we resolve the question from? Omale Rav Acha b'rei Rav Ashi. Rav Acha, the son of Rava, said to Rav Ashi, Toshma, let me prove from the following case. The following case, which is a Gemara or Mishnah, probably in I think it must be a Mishnah, in maybe a Brisa in Shavuos. Says this: Monani biyodcha. Someone turns around to someone else and says, you owe me money. Omaloi said to him, hen, you're right, I owe you money. Now, Rashi adds two very important words, ubifnei edim. Rashi says, Omaloi ubifnei edim. This is in front of edim. He says, I owe you money, I agree, I admit. The next day, Omaloi says to him, Taneuli, give me the money. You agreed you owe me money, so now pay up. Im Omar, he says, if he says, Nasativ loch, if he says, I've already given you the money, potter. He's potter. Ein lechob b'yodi. But if he says, Ein lechob b'yodi, there's nothing, you don't have any money in my hand, chayev. Then he's obligated, then he's chayev, then he has to pay. So the Gemara wants to understand what the difference is between the two. What is it? Why is it? Yeah, we've got a straightforward case here where someone says, someone admits to owing someone else money, but he's believed to say, I already paid you back. I already paid you back. He's not believed to say, Ein lechob b'yodi. Yeah, you do not have any money remaining in my hand. Now, really, the two statements could mean exactly the same thing. Yeah, Ein lechob b'yodi. What is that? Why is that different to Nosativ lecha? I've given it to you. So the Gemara says, my love, don't you think that the difference between the two cases is this very question? Nosativ lecha, when he says I've given it to you, Amalei said in paratich bizmani, I paid you off at the right time. I paid you off when the loan came due, and that's why that's why he's believed. Ein lechob b'yodi, when he says you have no money in my hand, there is none of thing of yours in my hand. Do'amalei says to him, paratich b'toich zmani, I paid you off within the time. That means I paid you off earlier. I paid you off before the debt became due. Okotoni, and in that case, chayav, we say is chayav. We say he has to pay. Alma, so you see, mokum chazaka, in a place of chazaka, lo yaminon mali l'shaka. We don't say mali l'shaka when there's a chazaka that people don't pay off early. When there's a chazaka, people don't pay off early. That seems to be the very difference between the two cases. It makes sense to say, and therefore will prove, resolve our question. When there's a chazaka, people don't pay back early. We don't say mali l'shaka. We don't say a logic to believe him, because why would he be lying? So the Gemara says, no. My ein lechob b'yodi. What does it mean, ein lechob b'yodi? What does that mean? It means lo hoyu dvar me'olam. He's saying this never existed. Ein lechob b'yodi means you never lent me money, right? Because the master taught, if you say to someone else, I never borrowed money from you, then that is the same thing as saying I haven't paid back, by definition. Yeah, that's what it means. You said I haven't paid back. If I say I never borrowed from you, right? Then it's like saying I never paid you back, because if you haven't borrowed something, yeah, then obviously you haven't paid back because you're saying you never borrowed, right? And what's the problem with that? Because he already admitted in front of Aiden that he did owe money. Okay, that he did owe money, and because he already admitted that he did owe money, that he owes him money, so then he can't be. That's why he can't be believed. He can't go back on what he said before. If you look at Rashi says, "Ein lechob b'yodi mefarish v'azal mahi." Lo hoy. The Gemara is going to explain what that is. Lo hoy dvarim. When he said it never existed, hilka chayav l'shalem. That's why he's chayav to pay. Shari yesh eidim shoydele b'fneim, because there are eidim that he admitted in front of them that he owes the money. The kimad omar lo lo visi, and since he said lo lo visi, I didn't borrow the money. Moiduhu shaloi pora, right? He's admitting that he hasn't paid back. If a person says, I never borrowed it, that means he's agreeing. He's saying, I didn't pay back. Shekol mi she'eino lova, eino porea. Anyone who doesn't borrow also doesn't pay back. Definition. Hilkach therefore ka'omer lo porati domi. It's as if he said, I didn't pay back. Di'ilu omo porati. Had he said, I did pay back, then he'd be believed. Afiru lova b'fnei edim, even if you borrow money in front of witnesses. The Chaim on b'shvuos, because we hold in shvuos hamalva es chavero be'edim. Someone who lends someone else money with edim, ein tzorach lepara be'edim. There's a whole machlokas there about whether you have to pay back with edim or not. We hold, says Rashi, you do not need to repay with edim. So if he says I paid you, he's believed. Okay, if he says I paid you, he's believed. However, here he's not saying that. Here he's saying now, I never borrowed the money in the first place. That is something he cannot do, right? Because by saying that, he's effectively saying, I haven't paid you back, and he's already admitted he's already admitted that he did borrow the money, right? Tosfos has a bit of a problem here that the Gemara seems to go a little bit around the houses because it's obvious. The Gemara simply should have said that if a person, if you look at the first few lines of Tosfos, the second Tosfos Dibra Maskal Kol, he says, Hiksharav Benu Yitzchak, Matzorech Kan Matam Kol Omer. Why do you need here this reason of anyone who says, Kol Omer Lelavisi Kilu Omer Brati Dom? If you say I didn't borrow, it's like you said I didn't pay back. Right? If you've already admitted you owe the money, then you're clearly not. If you admit in front of Adam you owe something, right? You're obviously not going to be believed to turn around the next day and say, actually, I don't owe you the money anymore, right? It's obvious, right? It's obvious. Tosfos explains why the Gemara needs this phrase elsewhere. If you just skip to the end of Tosfos, he says, the Reed says it needs to tell us that he can't say one who says lo lovisa didn't borrow the money, lo shelo lova klal, doesn't mean that he didn't borrow the money at all. You might say it's as if he said lo lovisi. It's as if he said lo lovisi didn't borrow the money lefisha parati because I paid it back. Komash malon it means to tell us the ilu lo parati beheja. When we take the Gemara is just trying to emphasize the fact that when he says lo hoyu dvarim me'olam, it never happened. He doesn't mean because I paid back. He means because there was never a loan, right? And we treat it as if he explicitly said, I have not paid you back. I have not paid you back. Okay, and because he says he is effectively, by saying lo hoyu dvarim me'olam, it never happened, he's saying, admitting he never paid. Therefore, clearly he has to now pay up, because he's already admitted that he is indeed chayav to pay. So what we've done is effectively say that we cannot resolve our shaila from here either, because the cases are not talking about our scenario. It's talking about whether or not we can, if a person says, it's talking about it's talking about a different case. It's not talking about the question of whether we say a migoy b'mokum chazaka or not. The question is whether or not it's resolved elsewhere. Let me just have a quick look.
What is the actual halacha then?
Yeah, I just want to see if I can look that up. 1 second. Okay, 1 second. I can't see it clearly here. Yeah, I can't see it clearly here. I took 1 second. That's not going to help. Yeah, okay. I'm not sure how we pass on this. Have to maybe I will try and see if I can get that answer to that for next time. Anyway, any questions on this? Yeah, Martin.
So just something that's not clear to me. In the situation of Paratich money, in a case of a loan whereas actually suffer the suffer's money, I would have thought would have been a better argument than saying I paid it all to you at the end, or because you're incurring the cost on a, let's call it day by day basis. So me saying I paid you in the middle should be an equivalent response to kind of how you're getting the cost anyway.
Which case are you going on?
And so I'm going on the first Tashma that we've got, but we also spoke about it last week as well.
Right.
Where we said, look, this is the way I answered it. If he uses the argument of Paraticha b'tachas money, we don't believe him, according to the first Manda Amar of the Basra, because that's not the way of the world. But in this case, the loan is against a incrementally incurring cost. So in a case of an incrementally incurring cost to the person who's paying for the wall to be built, it makes more sense to say, I paid you, during the build of the wall, because you're incurring the costs during that period. But we don't seem to make any allowances for that kind of that funding model.
Why is it? I don't understand. Why is it a difference if it's an incrementally? Why does it make a difference if it's an incrementally incurring cost?
Well, we seem to dismiss that argument as a result, where we've said some of it suffers money, and therefore it can't be. You can't claim the argument of I paid you in the middle. We've said that at least twice. So if it's good enough to rule it out, why can't we use that to rule it in?
I don't understand. How would you? At the end of the day, what we're saying is that a person, because you can't make a comparison at all in the cases. There is no tochas man. There is no tochas man. The loan becomes obligated all the time. There's a chiyuv to pay all the time. Kol shah v'shah. Right? That's what we're saying. Same matter. So how is that? I don't understand. How are you going to use that to pay? What are you doing with that? What do you want to do with that?
So I want to be able to use that as a specific situation that says that if I paid you in the period in which you're incurring the costs, therefore it's a valid reason it's a valid acceptance of repayment excuse because you are in the period of incurring the cost. It's not like on day one I borrowed £100 from you, and on day 30 I need to pay back £100. It's more like, on day one it costs you £3, and so I owe you £3. On day two, it's another £3, and now I owe you £6. So what we're saying is on day 15, actually, I owe you, I've lost my math, I owe you £75 or £50. And therefore, if I said to you, I paid you £100 on day 15, but Tachazman, it makes sense because you're halfway into the cost and you've got halfway of the cost left. And therefore, I'm kind of doing a kind funding model where we seem to not care about that and dismiss it whatsoever. We treat this as a regular loan.
No, but we're saying that's why you'll always be believed. The Mishnah says on that case, you're always going to be believed. So I think what we're saying is because of the svara of kol sofer v'sofer's manihu, even if he says to paratich b'soch's money, paratich b'soch's money, I paid you off within the time, that won't prove that people pay off within the time, because here you're always going to be believed. Because here people naturally want to pay off at any stage. I think that's what we're saying. We're saying there's simply no distinction. It's always, that's the whole svara that the minhag is to wait till the end. No, here it's not, because every stage, every time he puts another brick on, bang, I'm really obligated to pay now, even though it might be for convenience. I might just do it all in one go. We're saying that the whole, that's I think what we're saying. That there's no distinction between the two. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but anyway, you're going back to the opinion of Rabbi Rabbi who said he's believed anyway.
What was that?
You're going back to the opinion of Rabbi Rabbi that says the guy's money that he's believed.
We wanted to try and prove from there that that a person would be believed, and we're saying, like a buy and Rava, and we're saying it's no proof. It's no proof. Because there is no minhag not to wait till the end. If you follow that Ktsos HaChoshen, right? There's no minhag. There's nothing yet. I think so. Okay, let's go and start the next Gemora. You got it? Yeah, 2/3 of the way down. Or near enough. Person puts another wall next to the first one. Then megalgalin olav esakol. What did Mishnah say? If you build another wall next to it, then you got to make that. That shows that you are happy with the higher wall that the guy's made, and therefore he's got to pay for the whole share, his 50% of the whole cost. Now this comes to a point that Jeremy raised, I think, last time, which was how far does it go? So if I have a wall that's 10 foot high, yeah, and I build that's the party wall, and I let's say build one that's 8 foot, do I have to pay for the other 2 feet, whatever? What is it? Where does the level of obligation go? Is it just corresponding to the height that I build my wall in my property, or does it have to be, or does that not make a difference? And this is actually a machlokus in the Gemora. Amar Rav Huna says, "Somach lepalga, somach lekula." If the first wall in either length or height, right? Because we didn't really consider length, yeah. It wasn't is as half the height or half as long as the party wall in the middle. Yeah, you've got the situation, right? You've got the situation where there's a guy who builds a wall down the middle, and you build your wall in your property next to him, next to it, right? Next to it. So it doesn't make a difference whether the wall is half as high or half as long as he did. It's somach lekula. You have to pay 50% of the whole wall that the guy in the middle built, right? Rav Nachman says no. He says lamayda somach lamayda lo somach. No, it just goes with however much you built, right? If you built a wall that was half as high as the wall that went down the middle, again above the 4 amas, the 4 amas is automatically 50% each. We're going higher than that, right? Yeah. If you built that, then that's how much you have to pay, but not beyond that. Lamayda lo somach. That which you didn't build opposite it, then you don't have to build. Then you don't have to pay. Let's see Rashi. Somach lepalga. The new wall wasn't as long as the first wall. It was half as long. In height. It didn't reach as high as the first wall. Somach lekula. He has to pay his part in the first wall. As if he has put the second wall corresponding to the entire first wall. Now, what's the svara of Rav Huna? Because if you think about it, Rav Nachman seems much more logical, right? Rav Nachman says it's very simple. However, if you go however high you go, that means that's showing you're interested in his height, right? Well, proportionately. However, whatever you do, that's what you got to pay for. Yeah, whatever you demonstrate you're interested in. Says Rashi that given the hischil, since he's begun it sofo ligmor, the logical assumption is he's going to end up building the wall at some point as high or as long as the first wall. The yitain tikra, and he's going to put a roof on. The Tnan and the Mishnah says, "Al bishlei nasan olav tikra," even though he hasn't yet put the roof on. No saying miyad. He's got to give the whole right. The whole. He's got to give immediately the whole payment. There's a little addition here from the Rashbam. Tosfos v'yasa aliyos al gabi tikra, and he'll end up putting upper stories on top of the roof. Right, and he will need at some point the height of the wall that the other guy has built. The other guy has built. So that's Rav Huna's svara. Now Rashi doesn't explain Rav Nachman's svara because, like I said, Rav Nachman seems much more logical in the sense, right? Rav Nachman is much easier to understand. Rav Nachman says that fundamentally, what is the principle at work here? The principle is that up to 4 amas, we have to automatically share 50% of the cost each. Why? Hezekriya. Yeah? Hezekriya, up to 4 amas, fine. Beyond that, what creates my chiyuv, my liability to contribute to the cost, to contribute 50%, is my demonstration, yeah, that I am happy with that extra height, and I'm going to use it, and I want it, and I'm going to benefit from it. Because if I don't do anything to show I'm interested in it, then I can basically turn around to you and say, it's your business. I don't care. You built a very high wall for whatever reason you wanted, right, between us, but I'm not going to do more than I'm chayav to pay unless I show that I am interested. So Rav Nachman says, well, that depends on what you demonstrate. If you have a wall, if he builds a 10 amas high wall and you build a 6 amma high wall, so then you pay 50% of the extra 2 amas, right? And Rav Huna comes along and says, no, once you've built a 6 amma high wall, it's logical that you're going to go and build the rest of it at some point because, why not? You'll probably will. You'll end up building upper story or whatever. But the Gemara qualifies this. But Moida Rav Huna says the Gemara, Bekarna v'lufsa. Rav Huna agrees, Bekarna v'lufsa. Now, look at Rashi on this. Moida Rav Huna Bekarna v'lufsa, b'chibah shebekeren zovis, with an attachment on a corner. Lufsa means chibur. You have this phrase, the Gemara says in Brachos, if you have something, the lafis es apas. You know that you remember that phrase? Liftan in the Gemara, right, is like jam or anything that you spread on bread. So it's the same word, right? It's something you attach. Yeah, that's the same word, lufta, right? You attach this, right? So here's an attachment. Lufta is chibur, attachment. Haresha is sof beiso shel Ruvain, dovuk lekosol zeh, shebein shtei chatzeros. You have the end of Ruvain's house. You have the end of Ruvain's house. Let's just do a picture here. One second. Can you see my screen? Okay, let's see how I can do with drawings here. So basically, let me just explain what Rashi's saying. Here's the party wall down the middle. Yeah, here's the party wall, and basically, Ruvain's house is, well, it must be here, I think. Yeah, Ruvain's house is here. That's right. Ruvain's house is here. So the party wall, yeah, is between the two houses, and Ruvain's house is over there. Okay. Between the two courtyards. And after a time, Nimlach Ruvain zeh, Ruvain changed his mind, and he decided. He put another little house here, or an extra building. He did an extension there. And the protrusion of the building extended opposite a little bit of the length of the wall, which just separates between the two courtyards. Moide Rav Huna agrees, right? That which he did not build further out, then lo somach. He hasn't put it near. That which he hasn't put it near, he hasn't put it near. Because a building like this is not generally will not be extended further. Anyone knows a lot about extensions might ask questions on this. People build extensions and they definitely end up trying to extend them more. But the basic idea is that there's a difference between an extension that a person puts on their house, and the extension uses the party wall. It's a formal type of building. So the logic is that you're not likely to extend that any further lengthwise, or maybe I think it could be even in height-wise. Yeah. Is that clear? Yeah. Is that right? So then Rav Huna would agree.
Why are we talking about this? In what we're trying to clarify here? This seems to be a completely new. This doesn't seem to be anything to do with the height of the wall.
Well, remember, that's why we explained that we're height or length.
So
I think here you can explain it both ways. What you're saying
is that there is a difference between the height where you might want to, or you are expecting to extend it up to the full height, even if you don't initially build your second wall up to the height, you extend it, but you would, whereas with an extension, you would not be expected.
No, I don't think we're saying that. It's a very important point, though, Jerry. I think we're saying is I don't think we're making a distinction between height or length, right? We're treating them as the same category, okay? Whether it's height or length, okay?
Right.
Rav Huna's whole svara is that even if I build a wall, right? So I build a wall that's maybe half as high as his wall, right? If I put a wall that's half as high as his wall, then we assume you've got to pay for the full 50% of the entire height of the wall in the middle. Why? Because it's logical at some point you're going to keep increasing that wall. You're going to use the full height of his wall. And therefore we say you've got to pay 50%. Says Rav Huna, when you build a proper building, like an extension on your house, yeah, that corresponds to his, that uses his wall, that we don't say it's likely you're going to build more. And that could be in height or in length. right? If you build an extension on your house like this, right? We say you only have to pay for the part of the party wall that you used for your extension. And that means you're not going to have to pay for this part here. And you're also not going to have to pay higher. So like if I do, I'm not really good at drawings. If you do a cross section, you can do like imagine this is the ground. This is a ground section. This is Ravein's house, right? This is Ravein's house. And he does an extension like this. Yeah. Okay. And he does an extension like this. And this is the big wall down the middle. Can you see? Yeah? Yep. You with me, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Can you see what I mean? So this is a massive wall between the houses. I've now drawn a. I didn't do art, right? GCSE, right? But you can see that this wall is the dividing wall, right? It's a cross. Is that what they call a cross section? Yeah. This is a dividing wall. So all of this, Rav Nachman seems to say you got to pay for that. Once you've done a little bit, use the wall a little bit over here. That's enough. You got to pay the whole lot. You got to pay all of this. Yeah, the whole thing. Says Rav Huna, no, you've only got to pay. Sorry, the other way around. Forgive me. Rav Nachman says you've always got to pay. Always got to pay the full. Rav Nachman says you've always only got to pay the proportional part. Rav Huna says no. Generally speaking, you pay the whole lot. But if it's a fixed building, if your building that you build here is a fixed building, we don't assume you're going to build more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And the Gemora says similarly, Umoida, Rav Nachman ba'afriza b'kvasa dikshuri. Ba'afriza b'kvasa dikshuri. Says Rashi, Rav Nachman agrees ba'afriza b'kvasa dikshuri, leaning gova to come Rav Nachman, de lamayda lo somach, with regards to the height. Rav Nachman says that which he hasn't put it next to, you only pay the proportional that he's built. Moedu he agrees, that if he placed on the wall that he put next to the other one, the place where the beams, the ends of the beams will go, he's already positioned the holes where the ends of the beams are going to go, al panei kula. We assume he's going to go higher, like the height of an upper story. He clearly is happy with the height of the first wall. And he has to give the whole, he has to pay 50% of the entire height. If he does something which shows he's put holes in the wall, that shows clearly that he intends to build an upper story, build higher, use the full height of the party wall, he's obviously got to pay 50%. And last Rashi, Afriza 8 orach, that's a long piece of wood, the oven thick. You put that the whole length of the wall. To put the ends of the beams on. It protects them from rotting. Because of the lichluach hakosel, that means to say the moisture of the wall. In the Mishnah called the Maltisin, a Misha ein loy also eats of something doesn't have that beam, that person makes holes in the wall. You put little pieces of wood above and below the hole, it's stood on the sides, and you put the inside the hole, you put the ends of the beams. That's what akvasa dikshuri are. So basically, this afriz and akvasa dikshuri are two ways of expressing the same thing. Rav Nachman says you only pay 50% of the height of wall that you've built corresponding to his wall, but not if you show and demonstrate that you fully intend to build it higher, right? If you've done something you show you're going to build it higher, you put holes in the wall which show they're ready for the beams to build the upper story, then you've got to pay 50% of the entire height of the wall. Mitzvah Hashem will continue this next time. Okay, have a good evening.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care. See you soon.
Thank you.
Pleasure.